Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening Remake for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we essentially did manage to explore into the mysterious forest by able to actually do quite a number of things, ranging from explore certain areas that not only we somehow found the toadstool, which potentially speaking of, we did somehow give the toadstool to the witch, and as a result, we did somehow manage to able to get ourselves, magic powder. So this means we can now able to actually do quite a number of things with the magic powder. Like for instance, we did somehow manage able to help out someone by turning back into its normal self, because normally he did somehow turn into a raccoon, and as a result we did somehow use the magic powder to able to turn him back to normal. And as a result, in addition to that, we also did manage able to, well, get ourselves the first important key that pretty much leads us to the first dungeon in the game. In addition to that, we also did manage able to, well, find some more items here and there, ranging from secret seashells, and also say applies to the fact that we somehow get ourselves the next piece of heart. So naturally, we've actually got into 4 heart containers so far. So today, for this video, is that potentially speaking of which, we're about to be going into the first dungeon in this remake, and that's what appears to be Tail Cave. So, for the most part though, the first dungeon is pretty self-explanatory and easy, especially concerning about the fact that, like I said before, this is the first dungeon we can able to go into. So of course, just like in any other Zelda games, including the 2 different versions of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, not only about the fact that we can able to actually keep on collecting some small keys every time whenever you do manage to able to defeat certain enemies. In addition to that, there's also the compass, which every time you enter a new room, it actually creates a sound depending about the fact that what room you go into. Because, for instance, if we're about to take on those enemies here and activate the switch right there, the chest actually pops up, or a treasure chest I should say, and now, naturally speaking about the fact that it actually gives us yet another small key. And on top of all that stuff though, there's also going to be, you know what I'm talking about, there's going to be a map that we can able to try to find, and in addition to that, the Nightmare Boss's key, or the Nightmare's key I should say. And relatively speaking though, as you can see on this little, top portion of this particular room right there, there's actually that particular one-way door that you can only able to actually continue progression if you manage to able to go into a one-way door. However, I'm probably not gonna do that right away, because as you can tell, every time whenever you go into a one-way door, obviously though you can't, you know, go back onto the previous room, so you have to able to actually take the actual specific progression until you're able to realize about the fact that, well, like I said, we can't go back to the previous room if you accidentally activate the, you know, the one-way door. So, but I digress. So, few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 20th of August today, in some cases in 2024 today. So generally speaking, though, is about the fact that we've only got about 12 more days to go until we're about to be approaching on to the next month, which appears to be September. So because of that, and in addition to that though, is about the fact that for those of you who don't know already, that recently though, that Nintendo has just announced there is going to be yet another Nintendo Direct, except this time it actually focuses on one thing only, and that's what appears to be about the fact that it could be something more related to the museum, which I was originally trying to able to explain about that particular topic though, but let's just say we'll let Maxi will mention more about that particular topic, about the forms of Nintendo Museum Direct, during at some point once he's going to go back on to Luigi's Mansion 2 until tomorrow, because, well, relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that no matter what though, we are, you know, thankfully going back into 3 games at a time when it comes to, depending on the actual daily basis, for certain days and all that stuff. So, for instance, it's about the fact that, like what Maxi has already mentioned about this before, that's recently, though, that Tiana, she's now working on to doing the actual Let's Play of Sonic Colors for the Nintendo DS. So relatively speaking, it was about the fact that it's actually pretty cool that we've now able to actually going to be playing through 3 versions or 3 different versions of Sonic Colors in general. Like, we've already done the Wii version of Sonic Colors back in 2017, and then in Journey Forms of in 2022, that we've already did somehow tackle through Sonic Colors Ultimate on the PlayStation 4 version most likely, and alongside with the Xbox One, and even with the Nintendo Switch version as well, but that's besides the point. And now in this year, that we're about to be tackling through the handheld version of Sonic Colors, or to be more specifically, Sonic Rush 3, plus is mainly because of the actual gameplay style looks remarkably similar to not only Sonic Rush, but as well as Sonic Rush Adventure, which I'm sure that most people already know what I'm about to say. So anyway, in terms of something else that's also been happening during around that time, actually, is about the fact that, well, fundamentally speaking, it was about the fact that one thing, I suppose, that Silver the Hedgehog, or potentially speaking of, Tiana, she did somehow completely forgot to mention about, or should I say that we somehow completely forgot to mention about, is about the fact that, did you guys know about the fact that it's been about 7 years ago since Sonic Mania did somehow came out, not only on PlayStation 4, but as well as Xbox One, and even Nintendo Switch as well. So generally speaking though, yeah, it's been 7 years ago since this particular beloved Sonic game has been out for, you know, quite a long time, since 2017. So because of that though, yeah, happy late 7th birthday, or should I say, happy late 7th anniversary of the game's release of Sonic Mania. So, would I still recommend it? Absolutely, especially concerning, despite it does have a lack of originality department, but regardless of anything else though, you should definitely still you should probably still able to actually recommend that game to you guys, especially concerning for the fact that every nowadays though, that Sonic Mania does now have more versions every nowadays, ranging from, you know, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC Steam, and even nowadays with Netflix on smartphones. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. Despite that, for what I've heard anyway, that the Netflix version of Sonic Mania, specifically Sonic Mania Plus, is by far the worst version of the game, mainly because of quite a number of things, like for one, it's only accessible if you manage to sign into your Netflix account. And on top of that, the touch controls can be felt a bit too finicky for my liking. And in addition to that though, for what I can tell about the fact that you do need, like, I don't know, internet connection or something like this. So yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer though, especially unlike the Switch version, that it runs really well, especially considering for, despite the actual quality wasn't nearly as high compared to the defaults of how it does on the PlayStation 4 version, to be more specifically. And relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that when it comes to the Switch version of Sonic Mania, still runs pretty well on the Nintendo Switch, that is. So, but anyways, as you can tell, that the first dungeon item we somehow got familiar, that's what appears to be Rock's Feather, where you can able to have the ability to jump. So, yeah, that was actually kind of like a similar situation, or to be more specifically for that matter though, that this is actually the coolest aspect when it comes to The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Not just by the forms of in the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color version, but also on the Switch version as well, that you can have the ability to able to actually just to, well, jump. Although this technically is not the first time that Link can able to actually jump in a Zelda game, because that honor goes to the forms of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, for the NES or Famicom Disk System for those of you who lived in Japan. And relatively speaking, that will continue that tradition when it comes to having a jump ability, when it comes to likely for those two current Zelda games at that time, which there are The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So yeah, you get the idea for that particular point worth noting for. So, and of course, just like the defaults of how it does in the original version of the game, including the Game Boy Color version, that every once in a while though is about the fact that the more you try to able to actually progress onto certain dungeons, you have to face off against with the mini boss until you're able to actually continue your progressioning for certain dungeons. So, for instance, we did somehow manage to take on that particular mini boss right here. And also, if you're trying to able to equip the fairy bottle right there, what makes this pretty cool though is that you can now able to actually capture fairies on a fairy bottle, which unlike the previous two versions of Link's Awakening, obviously though you can't do that because obviously though the fairy bottles are nowhere to be found. So apart from those side of things though, yeah, this is such a cool addition to this remake, especially it makes the entire journey a lot more easier and self-explanatory this time around. So, and of course, just like before, if you manage to defeat certain mini-bosses, basically though, there's that particular portal you can able to actually go into, that basically though, it actually acts out as like you go to fast travel, likely or so, to able to take you back to the beginning portion of the dungeon, or just simply just take you onto the midway point of the dungeon itself. So because of that though, everything else will become to expect, basically. So, anyways, and just like the forms of how it does on the original Game Boy version, including the Game Boy Color version as well, basically though, every time whenever you get into certain rooms, sometimes though you're able to actually explore into certain 3D rooms, and other times though is about the fact that you go into 2D sections. So basically you play pretty much exactly like, well, you get the idea for this point. So anyways, here's the first boss in the game, and that's what appears to be Maldron right here. And this is obviously, that particular boss is almost inspired by the most annoying boss in the forms of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Except, thankfully though, this boss is incredibly easy, especially considering this is the first boss in Link's Awakening, depending on what version of the game you're playing. And relatively speaking, it was about the fact that, thankfully, if you manage to get knocked over by his attacks, and basically though, if you fell to the bottomless pit, you don't go all the way back to that, you know, the previous rooms that you somehow managed able to, well, you get the idea what I was gonna able to try to say about this at this point in time. So either way, so there goes Maldron right here. So, oh no, piece of cake. And just like before, every time when you defeat certain bosses on certain dungeons, you're able to not only get yourselves the next heart container, or should I say the first heart container in the game, but it's also about the fact that we're able to get the plot MacGuffin, which is of course one of those instruments. So yeah, the first instrument we somehow got, and that's what appears to be a full moon cello. So basically though, just like the forms of how it does it in the, not only the original Game Boy version, but as well as the Game Boy Color version as well, that basically though is about the fact that once we finish up every single dungeon, or one of those dungeons I should say, basically though, the game will tell us about the fact that we must make our way to the next destination. So because of that, for instance, we need to make our way to the swamp somewhere. So because of that, yeah, we'll try to explain more about that. Not just by the forms of later on in this video, but definitely in the next video for sure. Because, relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that, well, usually relatively speaking, though, also, that I'm also very excited about the forms of what's going to be happening. And that's what appears to be about the fact that we actually get ourselves our full confirmation with the forms of the actual reveal release date for the likes of Inside Out 2, not only on DVD, but also on the Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray on the UK version. So, yeah, I'm basically excited about it, and as far as I'm aware, the film is going to be releasing on DVD and Blu-ray, and even 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. It's going to be releasing by the end of September, specifically September 30th. So, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. What I found was a little bit odd, though, is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the BBFC rating board, when it comes to the forms of the DVD and Blu-ray release, including 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, I found it was incredibly odd about the fact that the DVD version of Inside Out 2 does say BBFCU, whilst compared to the forms of how it does on the Blu-ray version, including a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray version as well, for some reason, the rating board is actually a lot different, which it did say PG stands for parental guidance, or parental guidance I should say. So relatively speaking though, yeah, it's incredibly odd, and relatively speaking though, it's kind of like a similar situation as the forms of Knuckles the series, as far as I'm aware, when it comes to the DVD and Blu-ray release of those specific mini-series, of those specific parts like that. Basically though, it did somehow mention BBFC 12, which actually means about the fact that they might actually contain some quite mild language here and there on Knuckles the series, as a matter of fact. But we still have no clue about the fact that when does the third Sonic movie trailer is going to be up. Especially concerning for the fact that, well, at this point in time, a lot of merchandise for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the movie, has already been out, specifically in America, but we still haven't got the trailer yet. So because of that, though, it's going to be one of those weird situations about the fact that they somehow brought up certain merchandise first, and then after that, though, they'll show us the actual specific trailer for the actual movie that hopefully will show up. Probably by that time until likely also about the fact that despite the fact that the August month is almost going to be over during that time, but, excuse me, and because of that though, I apologize for that particular awkward commentary for the sake of time, folks, because, well, let's face it though, it's just about the fact that I'm just basically just, well, pretty much excited for the most part, especially concerning for the fact that, well, for instance, as I mentioned this before, I was basically excited about the forms of, you know, trying to get myself Inside Out 2 physically now, especially concerning I can able to rewatch that film every single time if I somehow managed able to get myself my bad days and all that stuff. And, of course, you know, Nintendo Museum Direct, which I really wish if I was trying to able to mention about that stuff, but like I said before, it's probably best if we let Maxi will mention more about it if he goes back onto Luigi's Mansion 2, that is. So, in addition to that, about the fact that I can't even believe by saying this, we're about to be receiving, well, to be more specifically, in the American version most likely, that out of nowhere, we're about to be getting a very, very cool collector's edition made by Limited Run. Of course, Limited Run is once again responsible for able to actually try to make some cooler collector's edition for certain games. So this time around though, is about the fact that there was actually this very, very cool Sonic X Shadow Generations collector's edition is going to be on its way. Until, to be more specifically though, it's about to be releasing at some point until 2025. At least if I thought so anyway. So because of that though, in terms of contents they somehow got, my goodness, there's a lot of items they somehow managed able to contain. Like, I can able to actually mention about this all day, actually. So, for instance, it's about the fact that, well, you can able to actually pre-order this very cool collector's edition in Journey Forms of yesterday, all the way up to October 06, or should I say October 6th, so just to ensure for the fact that you don't able to miss this out, especially in terms of content-wise, that there's so much I can probably discuss upon. Like, for instance, Sony's contents will include, which there are, the standard edition for PC or physical day 1 edition of Sonic X Shadow Generations for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and even Xbox Series X, including Xbox One, if you want to count that combined. So, in addition to that, there's also physically Day 1 edition only, and also they somehow also gonna able to include our Sonic Adventure skin, General Robotnik's journal, and reversible cover, and there's also some very, very cool additions to it as well, like Sonic and Shadow Dreamcast statue, which I will say I'm gonna be extremely jealous about the fact that why can UK never got that though? But I suppose beggars can't be choosers, I guess, especially because from what I've seen it is actually really, really cool that it does manage to contain a statue of not only with Sonic, but as well as Shadow, as well as from that, they somehow standing on the actual Sega Dreamcast system, which makes sense, concerning for the fact that Shadow the Hedgehog's first appearance was obviously Sonic Adventure 2, for specifically for the Sega Dreamcast, especially concerning for the fact that that could be also applied for Rouge the Bad as well, but that's besides the point. So, anyway, the next thing they will able to actually decide to include, which appears to be Deluxe Art Book, and there's also going to be a Nintendo Switch or Blu-ray Steelbook, and there's also going to be original soundtrack CD, and there's also going to be Chao mini figurines, usually for the sake of not only regular Chao, but as well as Hero Chao and Dark Chao. So yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. And also they will include Sonic Shadow and Classic Sonic Shoe keychains, and there's also going to be a collector's box, and there's also going to be individual numbered certificates of Aphthous Ferry or something like that. And finally, the coolest part about it for me though is that they somehow managed to include commemorative Dreamcast jewel case, which, kind of thinking about it, yeah, it's really awesome, especially concerning for the fact that, again, as soon as that particular collector's edition is going to be up on specifically limitedrun.com, I'm going to be extremely jealous, especially because I was really expecting to try to get the collector's edition for Sonic X Shadow Generations, but unfortunately though, I couldn't afford it, especially because concerning for the fact that, well, obviously though, we are still aiming for specifically 3 versions of Sonic X Shadow Generations when it comes to pre-orders and all that stuff. So that's as far as I was able to explain about this for the sake of time. So anyways though, and there's also another thing worth mentioning for actually, is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the Nintendo Museum Direct, that obviously though, it did somehow go for about 10 minutes roughly, so because of that though, but then again though, it's probably best if we let Maxi mention more about it until tomorrow in some cases though. So anyway, and believe it or not, for this point folks, that's as far as we can able to talk about in terms of the forms of today's discussion. So because of that though, so yeah, as you can tell about the fact that since we're going to be able to try to dig up certain spots, because as you can see, certain secret seashells are usually now in new locations. So because of that, we can expect able to try to get even more secret seashells that was not found in the original Game Boy / Game Boy Color versions. So yeah, that's actually going to be pretty cool, especially concerning for the fact that maybe we were able to actually stumble across into ourselves some different amount of rewards during at some point later on in this playthrough. So anyway, so there's our next piece of heart right there, by simply trying to able to jump over those little holes there. So yeah, that's actually self-explanatory, especially that we somehow managed able to equip the actual rock's feather. So because of that though, yeah, everything else will be come to expect. So because of that, yeah, there's nothing else I can talk about, aside from the fact that I'm just so dang excited about the fact that, Inside Out 2 is now getting ourselves the actual physical DVD / Blu-ray release in the UK version now. So, relatively speaking, it takes a bit of while to able to actually show us the actual revealed release date for the likes of the forms of the home media version of Inside Out 2 for that particular point's worth noting for. So relatively speaking, there's also yet another secret seashell that was actually on there, which then again though is about the fact that it was not present on the original version of the game, including the Game Boy Color re-release. So yeah, I just want to classify that. But there's also this new edition that, technically speaking, is about the fact that, well, let's just say we'll save that particular topic once we get to Thursday, potentially. So, relatively speaking, it's just about the fact that I'm just, pretty excited able to actually not only trying to able to pre-order the DVD version of Inside Out 2, but also eventually with Super Mario Party Jamboree as well, which I suppose that'll be the next 2 things I want to pre-order, well, aside from the forms of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations as well. Well, usually relatively speaking, we'll save that particular topic once we're able to get on to the later days to come. So anyway, so yeah, there's the next piece of hearts right here, which is actually located on this particular area right there. So I don't suppose this particular piece of hearts was not in the original version of the game either. So relatively speaking, much like the some additional secret seashells, there might be some even more pieces of hearts that we can able to try to find in this particular remake. So I suppose something tells me about the fact that we can able to start actually holding ourselves some even more hearts if we somehow keep on finding some more pieces of hearts, including certain heart containers and all that stuff. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell, especially unlike the forms of how it does it in the original version of the game on the Game Boy / Game Boy Color for its re-release, that you can only hold up to for about, I would say, 14 hearts to be more specifically. So relatively speaking, it's about the fact that it's nice about the fact that a certain amount of extra pieces of hearts, including secret seashells, will be well, present in this remake. So, what's up with this strange building right there? Well, I suppose, then again, that particular topic can wait, during at some point on this Thursday. So because of that though, I suppose we should probably end things off at this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake for the Nintendo Switch. Is that we're about to be traversing into this particular hideout right there, and hopefully we're trying to rescue this beloved dog friend. So I'll see you guys until on Thursday. Later, fellas.